time we should be all in.
All right, excellent. Okay, well, good morning. My name is Kevin Harrington. I'm the Eans and Gear Coordinator here at the Department of Education, and we have a whole slideshow for you. The good news is most of it you're doing well, and we got some new stuff on the other end of this slideshow for reimbursement that some folks are doing now, and I think we'll all learn a lot about how to do the reimbursement and make sure it all gets back to the check gets back into your mailbox. So without further ado, again, we are the Emergency Assistance for Non-Public Schools Eans team, and this is our office hour, and we'll progress through our slides. And by the way, you'll have plenty of chances to ask some questions either in the chat or in person, and whichever way you prefer. So we're going to introduce ourselves. Again, I am Kevin Harrington, Gear Eans Coordinator.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shelley Chassie-Jandro. I am the Director of the Office of Federal Emergency Relief Programs. I also, Kevin alluded to the fact that our team is monitoring the chat box, and you will have an opportunity to engage with some questions and answers at the end of the hour. However, I did want to let you know that this office hour is being recorded so that we can share it with colleagues who have had some scheduling conflicts and may not be able to join us this morning at 10. In addition, this office hour is one of additional office hours that will be coming to fruition to support you folks.
Excellent. And I see Maisha just came in. Would you like to introduce yourself? She may be having a technical issue. Oh, can't unmute herself, she's telling you, Shelley. I'll give her 1 second or two here to see if we can work that one out. If not, I'll go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Sorry about that. I am Maisha Shah. I'm the fiscal coordinator for our federal team.
And Robert Palmer is also with us. Rob, do you want to say hello?
Hi, I'm Robert Palmer. I'm the management analyst for the team.
So we just wanted to give you a quick preview of some of the items that we're going to chat about today with you folks. So staffing requests, timesheets, inventory and reporting dates, the grant award notification, which you folks have all received at this point, the reimbursement process, which Kevin highlighted at the top of the hour, as well as application changes and the reallocation process that our team is starting to communicate with the U.S. Department of Education about.
All right, so I'm going to have the next couple of slides, and the two that I have, I kind of got the easy one, and so thank you, by the way, as our team worked through these. But staffing request, we have some good information, and at the end of the slideshow, there's some spots where you can go to our website and find all this good stuff. But again, you'll have access to this, and it is recorded. So you're doing a good job with that, but we kind of put down the particular steps. Occasionally, some folks might miss one step, and the whole idea is if we kind of hit all the right steps and bells and whistles, then everybody is brought on board as quickly as possible and they're able to start work. I will highlight a couple of things. That staffing request, there is a sheet that you can go to. The information that's on that is needed by Atlantic Staffing for us, for the DOE, but also Atlantic Staffing in order to process through correctly and to get that person on payroll and ready to work. That one dedicated Eans, it says Eans program .doe@maine.gov, that dedicated email box is the place that we go daily. And we found if you're able to send it directly to that particular box, it saves kind of any overlap or the additional steps, because in the past, if it went, for instance, if it went to Shelley or went to myself, or you folks may have recalled Barbara Rancourt was working with us for a while. If it went to one of those boxes, then we would have to go back to the dedicated box to make sure it wasn't there, and it just kind of snagged things up. So if you would, and you have been doing this really well, so thank you. If you'd send it directly to the Eans program box, that is really helpful to progress through this whole process. I would say down on step 3 in particular, that little bold piece at the bottom, employee cannot start employment until the hiring with Atlantic Staffing is complete. So through your application, of approved application, and you would put in there that you wanted to add a staff member, and that's wonderful. And now you filled out the sheet that shows up on step 1, and it goes over here to us at the DOE, and then we do our part. which is number 2 on this, and then we send it off to Atlantic Staffing. The whole process is when it goes to Atlantic Staffing, they speak with that employee that you have, that prospective employee, and they get all of that information squared away, and then they are ready. Once Atlantic Staffing gives them the heads up, they are ready to start working. So occasionally what has happened is somebody would be, for instance, working in September, but they haven't actually been through this whole process to be brought on board. And that gets a little awkward down the road, especially because at that point, technically you're paying them, because once they're on board and officially through the process with Atlantic Staffing, then they can start. So by all means, take a look at this slide when you have an opportunity and just kind of make sure if any new staff coming in that we've hit all those little bells and whistles so that we make sure there's no issue down the road. I've always kind of looked ahead for auditing, and we don't want to have any red flags that jump out at the auditors. I'm ready for the next one. Okay, great. Let's see. So your timesheets on this one, you're doing a good job with that. We have updated the actual timesheet because there is certain information that is needed in order for us here at the DOE to go ahead, or the DOE, my basement, to go ahead and to do this job and to make sure the right information gets where it needs to be in order for the person to be paid in a timely manner. So a couple of things. When the employee fills out the latest timesheet, the updated version, and they give it to one of the supervisors at the school level, whomever is reading through that and then signing off. Once you've done that, that's great. Occasionally we get with no signatures and things, and it kind of slows it down a bit. And we don't want to have that situation where we can't pay the person in a timely manner. So making sure the signatures are there. Legible. That's occasionally it'll come in and I really have no idea whose name is on there. It gets to be kind of unique. So if it's legible, that would be really helpful. The signatures are on there. And when you do scan it in, our GEM system really likes PDFs. And when it doesn't come in as a PDF, it seems to get a little upset. So if you save it as save it as a PDF. Also, when you do scan them in, if we could do it in such a way, I know it takes a little while to get used to this thing, but scan it so it comes over to us as a PDF upright and on one page. That's great. Sometimes when it doesn't go that way, it comes in 2 different pages. It's kind of a mess on that end of it. So if you're able to do that, that would be wonderful. And again, the timesheets, we've been stressing this right along. The process that we do in order to make sure folks are paid in a timely manner. Timesheets are due every Friday by 5 p.m. I know when we get these holiday weeks, it gets a little odd, but anytime when we can get them in by 5 p.m. over to our inbox, that Eans box that I talked about, the dedicated box, we're able to do what we need to do to get it processed and really to get it to Atlantic Staffing, and then your folks get their paycheck as expected. Especially with the holidays coming up, we don't want anyone to have a surprise. So that's there. Those last 2 slides are really helpful. And again, most of you are doing it really well. But if you would just take a little look-see to make sure that we've covered everything we're supposed to, it just makes the whole process work quickly on our end. Thank you.
So one item that we wanted to highlight on the grant award notification was there are a number of attachments that are extremely informative. One of them being in regards to the inventory requirements. Within the Eans program, you folks know that all goods that are purchased are property of the department, and we need to be sure that we have a detailed list of what those items are. And those items are really the items that have any longevity. So we're not asking you to inventory the sanitation wipes that you bought to wipe down surfaces to make sure kiddos are being safe in the classroom, or the masks that you are supplying to your students, but those iPads and the computers and potentially the owls or the monitor screens that were purchased, all of those items, including desks, chairs, anything that has a life and is not a consumable item in our regards, will need to be inventoried. So we wanted to provide you the statutory requirement. And then we also wanted to support you in this process. So a worksheet, an inventory worksheet has been developed. It is available on our website, and it does allow you to use an Excel spreadsheet, and all of the columns are listed so that you can identify these items and the tag that is associated with that item. So for example, if you bought 50 individual desks, on your list, you would have on the Excel spreadsheet, you would indicate the 50 desks, and then each one of those desks would have a tag example. So we wanted to provide you this information because we will be collecting this information from you folks annually. So we looked at January 31st, 2022 to kind of get that inventory list from you folks. And then again in 23, and as you know, the Carissa Eans concludes on 9/30/2023. So we will need a collection, a list of all the items that you have inventoried so that we know exactly the items that are now property of the department. And as you folks know, that's a complexity and a nuance of this program that is very new to you folks, to us, to other states nationwide. The fact that the Department of Education is the holder of this property is a new concept. We don't see that in other federal funds. It's traditionally the LEA that is the owner of that property. So we're still working through the conversations that we need to have at the state level, but also with the US Department of Education, because this is complex, and it's not only complex for us, but for our colleagues nationwide as well.
So I want to mention also on that inventory, any of the receipts that you have, things that you've purchased, would be very helpful in developing your inventory list and moving through that. But if you do have questions, feel free to holler. Now, I think we've chatted with the next couple of slides. I'll do 8 and 9, again, grant award notification. So you may recall back when we looked at your, you had the 2-part, your intent to apply and then your actual application. When those were approved, in the application in particular, all of a sudden the grant award notification would show up on your end. If you went in following this approach, and we've highlighted a couple of things here in red, and if you click in there, just like you were going in to essentially look at your application, you'll notice it says GAN, and you click on that, and it gives you kind of a nice 1 page, which has almost contract-like. And then at the very bottom, I've stressed with a couple folks, and I think on the next slide, it'll show that the attachments. So if you scroll, it's kind of a 1-page piece. And if you read down through that, just to get some ideas, and at the very bottom, and I'll hit those other 2 boxes here in a second, but at the very bottom, you'll see those attachments, A, B, C, and D. And those are right there on your approved applications for you to take a look at. And I would recommend you do. They're very informative, and it kind of doesn't always give you every little minute detail that you might want. So by all means, call us, email, whatever, we will help you right out. But it does give some really good guidance, I think. And I know I've learned a lot from reading through those a few times. On slide 9, Edgar, oh, this is a big moment for me. See this nice book, Edgar. This is the one. It has, if you like statutes and kind of all the rules of the game, it's right here. And it's a really handy book for us. So the reason for saying that is there is a law, there are statutes out there and rules that we follow for this particular grant, and there are for pretty much every federal grant. I can't think of any that wouldn't have it, but they have all that good information, and it recommends all the different, like 34 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 76, 77, and so forth. That's all right in this wonderful book, and it gives us guidance on how to follow all the rules to make sure we're set on this. So the whole point of saying that is there is some statutes and laws that say we need to do the following, and that's why we're going ahead and doing that. You recall that March 13th date, 2020, I was a public school principal at that moment, and that's kind of when it all happened. And I remember thinking, well, what is this thing? It's interrupting my school and my day and whatnot. And that was kind of the big day when it all kind of got going with the COVID-19, and we learned a lot about it after that, for certain. But that was the day. From that date forward, up until current, that's when all of the different grants have come along and the different things that could be done based on a particular grant. In this one, we're talking about Eans 1 Carissa. And so that was a magical date there as far as all the processing that we had to do for approving the applications and all the way through to the reimbursement part. There is one other box there in the closeout terms. It says, so when we get near the end of this particular grant, so the dates we've mentioned a few times along the way over the last few months with different folks, but September 30th, 2023, that will be the end date for Eans 1 Carissa. And then there's a red box that says any funds not invoiced by October 15, 2023 will no longer be accessible. So what we're trying to point out there is that the grants, your applications have been approved, the funding is there, we've created the GASA so that the reimbursement can take place. So we want to go ahead and you've made many purchases, and now we want to give you your money back through following the reimbursement system that we're going to talk about shortly. So again, any questions that come up along the way, please throw them in the chat, or you can always talk with us afterwards too.
And we do have one question in the chat. I did allude to the fact that we will find that definition. Just knowing that I'm on the next couple slides, I didn't have a moment to pull it directly from our handbook, but I will get that information to you folks in the chat as soon as we change slides one more time. So Kevin really spoke about sort of the bottom section of the grant award notification, and then there's this top section in a grid form, and it has some really good information. The parts that I've highlighted here is all of the numbers associated with the non-public school. So these 4 lines are really critical, and we're just on the next few slides, we're just going to go into detail about what each one of those means. And we tried to create a color coding system so that you folks can then take this PowerPoint, take that color coding system, look at your application and your grant award notification, and be able to piece them together so you have a strong understanding of what each of these dollar values has on your grant award notification. As Kevin mentioned, this is a contract. So this is an agreement between the non-public and the SEA about these funds in particular. So down on the bottom is where that 4 lines of the grant award notification has been moved to. The top half of this screen on this PowerPoint is really related to the GEMS application. So when you went in and you determined what expenses and what categories or what items you wanted to utilize Eans funding for, that all correlates to what is identified in the grant award notification. So the very first line on the grant award notification is the federal award amount. And we refer to this as the final allocation. So when we had the intent to apply for all schools, that was utilized in the formula model that incorporated general population, low-income students, and the impact that COVID had on your school. So within that formula, an amount was generated for every single participating non-public school. So in the red box, that is that formula amount. So this is our test site. So Pine Mountain Academy was awarded $150,000 through that formula model. And you can see that that is the first line within the 4 lines of the grant award notification. You will also find that $150,000 at the very top of the budget components within the GEMS application. And then you'll see that it's identified object codes. And for this component, all I pulled was educational technology. And as I mentioned, this is our test site. So, you know, we usually try to put some language in there. Usually doesn't make sense. Depending on what kind of day we're having, sometimes we tell each other stories. We also put dollar values, which may not really be reflective of the work that's in the description. But again, this is our test site. So within every category, there, if allowed, was an opportunity to seek reimbursement or an opportunity to engage in future expenses. And those 2 lines sort of fall down at the bottom in a total amount. So in that sort of third box of text where you see the purple, orange, green, and blue, that is at the bottom of the budget component within the GEMS application. And what that does is it totals all of your reimbursement lines. So the 400, the 410, the 420 under reimbursement educational technology for every category, every allowable use. And that's the total under purchase services for reimbursement. The same concept for each budget category, and then also for future total. So that talks a little bit about those lightly yellow colored boxes. So what we did as a team is we needed to identify what expenses were going to be utilized through a reimbursement process for you folks, and also what expenses were going to be through Atlantic staffing for individuals supporting your school, whether that be a nurse to do contact tracing or a book buddy or after school tutoring. So what happens is when you look back down at the grant award notification, the GAN, the reimbursement amount is the total of every budget category and every allowable category. And that is the amount that is technically your reimbursement amount. So those are expenses that happened prior to submitting the application. So thinking about reimbursement really in that term, the fact that an expense has already incurred and we are reimbursing you. So you can see the $8,230 in the green aligned to the reimbursement total. The next line within the grant award notification is the future reimbursement amounts. And what those are is essentially the total of $4,000 and $7,300. Those two columns in the future total are added together to make the $7,510. So now you have two different amounts. One is reimbursements that transpired before the application was submitted. And then you have reimbursements, which are low cost, low risk expenses that you folks are going to secure and we are going to reimburse you for, but essentially you are securing them after the date of the application was due. And then the very last line, and my Zoom tools are over that last line, so give me a minute just to move those, my apologies. The last line is future expenses. So that is the amount that the department is maintaining for you folks to be able to engage in human capital. And that's how I'll boil it down. So it's purchase services. It's the human capital. The person that is going to be hired through Atlantic staffing is the $133,630. And that might be multiple people. Again, this is our test site. So some of these numbers are depending on where we are in the process. So now we have the reimbursement amount, we have the future reimbursements, and then we have the future expenses, which, like I mentioned, is the purchase service column in the future total. That is that amount. And if you take those three amounts, the green, yellow, and purple, and add them together, that is what you have selected as a non-public to utilize from your final allocation amount. So we're originally awarded $150,000 based on the formula, but you are receiving $149,370. And that extra remaining amount, you have indicated through this application process that you will not be utilizing. And I know that that's a lot of information, so I'm just going to kind of pause for a moment. We do hope that the color coding, red, blue, green, yellow, I think I tried to use every color there was, to help you make those connections between the application and the grant award notification. Like I said, I'm just going to pause for a moment to see if you have any other questions, because now that we have all this information, the next component that we're going to jump into is, great, we have all these funds, we know exactly how they're structured, we know which invoices are prior to the application, which invoices we secured after the application, we know exactly what we're doing. Now we're ready to essentially engage in the invoicing process, which we also refer to as a reimbursement model. So note that there's many different ways in which we use the term reimbursements, but essentially the department has always, with federal funds, had a reimbursement model where the school, the non-public, the public school engages in the expense, pays for that item and then seeks reimbursement from the department. That has been our structure and our philosophy with federal funds for as long as many of us within the department can recall. And we're going to get right into that reimbursement process.
Okay, so for reimbursement, the first point we need to remember that ARP Eans fund is a reimbursement fund. That means all the expenses that you are going to request us for reimbursement has to be incurred, and all those expenses needs to be paid prior to report to us for reimbursement. Say, for example, if you have an invoice you have not paid yet, we won't be able to make any payment on that invoice since it won't be a reimbursement. All the reimbursement request needs to be through GEM system. We will get into that GEM system in a bit, but prior to that, prior to going into the GEM system, we need to have some preparation. We need to prepare some supporting documents. The two types of supporting documents we needed is trial balance and all the receipts. So for any reimbursement request, you can request us monthly or quarterly. So say, for example, you are going to request us for reimbursement for the month of November. That means you need to prepare that trial balance for the month of November and include all the expenses that you incurred during the month of November. So in preparing those receipts, we would like you to arrange those sequentially, reflecting how the sequence in the trial balance, because however you are reporting the expenses in the trial balance, you need to arrange those receipts or the expenses as per the trial balance. And on each receipts, please mention the category name and account name. So what does it mean? Like you are trying to report the expense for PPE supplies. So on that receipt that include that expense, please mention PPE supplies or PPE 4,000 to 5,000. So that's the code. You can use the code or you can just write it down like it is supplies. And either trial balance or the receipts, all the documents needs to be saved as PDF prior to uploading it to the GEM system. So GEM system won't support in any other format of the document. Next slide, please. So how do we get into the GEM system? We will use 4pcamaine.org. This is the website. It will take us to the GEM system. And once you are in the home page of that system, at the bottom, you will see a link for Federal Grant Reimbursement System. You have to click that link and it will take you to the reimbursement window. And in the reimbursement window, from the top section, you will have a drop-down menu from where you will select your grant. In this case, it's Eans. And once you select that, you will see a new button. If you can go into the next slide, you will see a new button. And if you click that new button, it will take you to the reimbursement form. So for the new button, I would need to mention that if you are already working on a reimbursement request, which you have not submitted yet, or you have already submitted a reimbursement request to us, but we have not reviewed and approved it from our end, you won't be able to see the new button. So what it means that if a reimbursement request is in progress, it won't show you a new button. So you can only submit a new invoice to us or new reimbursement request to us only when your prior request is approved. And for the reimbursement request, our process is once you submit your reimbursement request, please allow us 10 days for the Eans team to review it and approve it. Then it goes to our accounting department and they again review it for payment processing. And please allow 10 business days for them. And once it is approved, totally approved for payment from our door, it will take 3 to 10 business days to get the reimbursement check. Next slide, please. So, so once you talking about the GEM system, you are in the GEM system, you select your fund and you select new button, then you will be able to see a reimbursement form. So it is the top, in the slide, you are seeing the top portion of the form, and most of the fields are already automatically filled out for you. However, for you need to mention billing period. So the billing period is the period for which you are requesting us the reimbursement. As I said, it can be monthly, it can be quarterly. So if you are sending us a reimbursement request for month of November, you will select here November 1, 2021 till November 30, 2021. And okay, and this billing date is very important because this should exactly match with the trial balance date as well. So that means that if you are sending us reimbursement request for November, for the month of November, then the trial, you need to, as a supporting document, you need to submit us the trial balance for the month of November. That should include all the expenses you are requesting us in this reimbursement request. And then, okay. Okay, and then as a type of the request, please select reimbursement because it is a reimbursement process. And this is the only process how you will get your fund. All right. So this is, again, it's from our test site, and it is just a portion of the reimbursement form. So we would like you to know that the table you are seeing here, the top left corner, it is showing you the allowable category. In this case, it is PPE. And on the right hand side column, you will see the budget categories. So all these fields are directly linked to the application that you have submitted. So that means that if you submit an application for this allowable category PPE, you will see it in your reimbursement form. Similarly, you can see that there are some budget for previously purchased PPE, $500 for purchase services, $80 for supplies, $90 for equipment. So all these numbers are directly linked with your application. So whatever you have budgeted in your application, you will see this number here. And previously invoice total, it means that it represents the total number of amount that you have already invoiced. So in this case, I mean, it is, again, it's just a test from our test site. So you can see under the budget category 4,000 to 6,000, it is $1 previously invoiced total, which means you have invoiced $1 previously out of $80. And what remains is, if you deduct this $1 from the $80, it is $79. So $79 remains for your future reimbursement. So in this fund invoiced means in this current invoice, the amount you are invoicing us for reimbursement. So you can invoice us $79 for this. Okay. And two things to remember when you are putting the numbers here, we cannot use $sign, and we cannot use any special characters like commas or anything else. So just the numbers. So fund invoiced, another point I need to mention that fund invoice for supplies, PPE supplies is $79, which means if you are submitting us the invoice for November, it is the total amount you expense for PPE supplies. Say, for example, it could be $50 for mask, or $29 for hand sanitizer. So you need to add those amounts together, because all those expenses were incurred during the month of November. So this total amount needs to reflect what you are providing us as a supporting document. And another, just one more thing. So the one last thing I should mention is that these are like federal grants, and we won't be able to refund you for any tax amount. Say for, I will take the same example, 79. The amount 79. So I would say like, okay, $50 for mask and maybe $30 for sanitizer. But on that receipt, $30 receipt, you have $1 tax. So you need to mention clearly that $30 minus 1, you are reporting us $29 for that receipt. So the taxes cannot be reported for reimbursement. So thank you.
I think I just want to kind of take this natural pause to see if there's any questions. I know there's none in the chat box, but if you folks have any questions about the reimbursement process right now while we're in the slides, might be helpful. I'll just take a moment.
I have a question from before on the inventory. You said it had to be submitted by January 31st. I don't know where it has to be submitted.
So you can send that directly to Kevin.
Thank you.
Actually, my apologies. Can you send that directly to the Eans program.doe mailbox?
Sure, thank you.
Hi, I actually do have a question on the reimbursement. I saw in the slide, and you had mentioned it could be billed quarterly, or we could request reimbursement quarterly.
Mhm.
So is quarterly the maximum amount of time? Like we should request reimbursement.
Yes.
Okay, so if our budget includes expenses going back to earlier in 2021, should we catch up? Like if it's like May, and if we expected expenses to start in May, can we go back and request reimbursement for May and June? I also saw it wasn't supposed to span past the fiscal year, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so so 1 month we could request reimbursement for May and June of 2021, and then the following month we would request reimbursement for like June, July, August. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Well, it would. Our fiscal years are July through June. So if you did May and June, then you would do July, August, and September.
Perfect. Okay,
Because
that
we
makes
want
sense.
to be sure that May, June, and July are not together, because those are 2 different fiscal years.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
So we just have a couple last items that we want to share with you folks. As we've mentioned, there is some nuances and some complexity in regards to the CRISA Eans funding. And we know that we've been identifying some schools, or some schools have identified that they need to make application changes. We have been communicating and working with the U.S. Department of Education, because part of the statute within this law required everyone to obligate funds within 6 months. And essentially, we have a grant award notification with you folks that has very specific dollar values. And we've reported that to the US Department of Education, indicating the commitment that we've made to you folks and also the obligations that we've made with Atlantic Staffing on your behalf. So if there are going to be changes to your application, I would encourage you to do them sooner rather than later, because eventually our assumption is the US Department of Education will indicate that no changes will be allowed, because we have met the obligation of 6 months, but we've met the obligation of 6 months with some very specific information that we've obtained from your application. So just kind of thinking about that in particular, knowing that these funds have some longevity through September of 2023, just trying to be mindful of what that would mean for your application. In the same token, we have a few colleagues who have determined that Eans funding was not going to meet their fiscal need and have identified that they would like to withdraw from the Carissa Eans program, which has opened up some funding. In addition, we have some schools, some non-public schools, who have indicated that they will not be utilizing all of their final allocation, as we mentioned, sort of that red number on the grant award notification, that they would not be utilizing their full allocation. So we have a source of funding that is going to be reallocated. It's still Carissa Eans funding, so it will still have all of the obligations and stipulations of this law. But what we hope to do in the next few weeks or so is reach out to all of our participating non-public schools and ask them if they have any additional needs and what those needs are, and if you would like to be included in the reallocation process. And again, our team is working on that currently, as well as working with the US Department of Education. We have received approval that that is a process that we can engage in, because as the law is stated, if we've done our due diligence to get these funds out to you, any unused funds are returned to the governor's fund, which could be utilized for other items under that authorized use. So we want to be sure that we are serving our non-publics to the best of our ability, which is why we've sought approval to reallocate the funds that have been awarded to other colleagues within our state.
Great. Well, I'll take it from here. We've just got a few slides that we're finishing up. Question and answers. You're more than welcome to unmute if you're comfortable with that and chat, or put it in the chat, or again, down the road, if you like, I know I like to process stuff, and then the next day I have a few questions. Feel free to contact us one way or the other, and we'll certainly do our best to get you the answers and whatnot. Like I said on the earlier, and just a little repeat, just on my own thought process, is the GEMS likes PDFs, and when you go to, especially with the reimbursement system, it has to be in the PDF format in order for those documents to come through to us. Because once you send in your invoice number 1, say for November, from the beginning of November to the end of November, and we'll go ahead and open that up and take a look at it, and look at those supporting documents, the trial balance, the invoice that you submitted, and we will go through all of that, and then also open up the application. Not reopen in that sense, but on our end, we can take a look at it to make sure everything aligns. And again, the bigger picture for me and for others at times is that I always kind of cautious if there were an audit. I want everything to line up, and I want that to go smoothly for you folks, but also for us. So if you have questions along the lines as you're moving into reimbursement, we've had 4 or 5 schools that have been doing reimbursements right along. Just recently, that is, but recently we've been able to process those. I saw the timeline in there, and you might have seen that, but mainly on the Eans grant, there hasn't been a flood of them yet. I suspect it might be different tomorrow. However, so I was able to, we were able to work through those, learn a few things, and actually process those quite quickly. And I know that some of the schools have already gotten the check back So the process went quite quickly. Shelley's put up our contact information. We also have, I think it was slide 20 that has resources for you, but also here's all our information to catch up with us, and we're pretty good about responding. So if you have any questions along the way, don't hesitate to holler or call, email, whatever. And it's nice to see the faces, by the way, for you folks that get your video on, and a lot of you look awfully familiar. So it's coming along really well. And I think as a team, we're really coming together and learning a lot about this process. So I do believe it's going to be quite seamless. So far, so good. Now, because I said that and I jinxed myself, I'm sure. But again, any questions, by all means, holler.
Kevin, this is Amory Swenson. I do have a quick question. It's very specific. I know a couple of weeks ago you helped me because we weren't seeing any available invoices to submit reimbursement requests for on the system. And it looks like now they've set us up to submit for this school year, but not for last school year. I still see no grants available when I look under the 2021 school year, and we do have some invoices to submit. So I'm just wondering if we could follow up on that.
Yeah, definitely will. What we do is we'll do the piece in-house to make sure we just haven't missed a step. And then with that being satisfied and it's still not quite there, we do touch base with the software company, the GEMS company, if you will, and have them take a look at it. They're quite good about responding and quick about that. So we'll take a look at that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We still have a few minutes within our hour, so if you have additional questions, you have a captive audience with our team at the moment, so that if you don't mind unmuting yourself or putting some questions in the chat box. I do know there was a question in regards to if this PowerPoint could be made available to you folks. We will be sure to send you folks all an email by the end of the week with the PowerPoint as a PDF so that you have the information. We hope that the color coding will be helpful for you folks. And in addition, there was a question about the video presentation. It takes a little bit of time just to cut and process, and another team does that work for us and then puts it on our website. But hopefully by the end of next week, we will have that video presentation available so that we can also email to you folks.
Hi, I had a quick question about if we do need to make any changes to our application. Do we just reach out to someone, one of you, about reopening it, or how would that process go? I apologize if you mentioned that.
Yep, just touch base with me, and we'll take it. We'll talk about it, see what it is you'd like to do, and we'll open it. And it's a simple enough process on our end. However, I just want to point out that there's this thing called a GASA, and once the applications are approved, then the GASA is created, and that allows the reimbursement system to become active. And when we reopen it, it kind of stops that for a bit, and then the GASA number is regenerated before your reimbursement system works again. So that's why we'll just touch base to make sure that it's truly what you want to do, and that everybody understands that it could slow down the reimbursement just a bit.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.